Hey there, good morning everyone. I'm back this week with another workshop. Today we're going to be making this little paper, hand-painted paper tiki guy. So I'm hoping everybody's got their materials all ready to go. And if not, you can just watch and then you can come back and watch this later. It will be on my Facebook page and I will also put it on YouTube. And so you can watch and do this at your leisure. But for now, I am gonna talk you through the steps of how to make this guy. And not sure what I'm gonna do with him at the end. I may actually make a couple similar ones next to it and maybe frame it and put it up for sale on my website at daveavanzinodesigns.com. If you're interested in some of my other tiki work, you can check that out there. There's also some steampunk art and a few other things. I do have a Disney gallery on there that you cannot purchase the artwork from there, but you can see all that I have available and you can message me about when and where you can get those. So, okay, I see a few people watching here. Somebody give me a shout out or a thumbs up or something. Let me know everybody's watching. I'm gonna have my little sip of coffee. I have my Magic Kingdom mug today for the East Coast Orlando people. So, hope everybody's doing well. And so what we're gonna do today is we're gonna paint this guy. And what we're gonna start with is this sort of faux wood tone. Now this is not a super realistic wood tone. It's a bit on the cartoony side, but exaggerated as opposed to a, oh, you know what, my light keeps going out, so I'm not sure why. Sorry about that. So it seems like that is gonna keep happening. So I will have to keep turning that back on. I'm not sure why it has decided to shut off every 5 minutes, but that seems to be a thing. So we're gonna do this wood tone, and like I said, it's kind of a bit on the exaggerated side because it kind of lends itself to the look rather than something that was a super high-end detailed wood tone. So we're gonna give our tiki head an overall wood tone, and then we're gonna come back in and kind of break apart these shapes and kind of using our colors, make them recede or come forward. And that's what light and dark paint does. It's kind of what you do in scenic painting or any painting. Anytime there's a darker color, that makes it appear further back, whereas the lighter colors seem to come forward. And that's what gives you that illusion of depth on something like this. So, I have my colors mixed, and what I did actually is make, this is kind of how I do my test to make sure that my tones are distinct from each other and that they, look good together. Even going over a couple of these a second time, like, yeah, I think I might want 2 coats of that. So it's always good to kind of, do a test before you do the actual thing on the paper you're going to paint on, and then that gives you, something to kind of work with. So let me move this. Okay, so I've got my little based guy here. Now he's got some pretty big black lines on him, the same as this, but you don't really see those at the end. But that's nice is they do show through the washes we're gonna put over so that when it comes time to do those outlines, you can see them pretty good. So I'm gonna start with my lightest color, my brown #1, and I love to get these little cups. You can get them from restaurant supply stores, and actually Target sells them. And they come with little lids, so you can actually store your paint for quite a while. They will keep acrylic paint wet for quite a while, so I use those quite a bit in my work. All right, so I'm gonna take this is where I'm gonna use my big brush here. I'm gonna kind of thin out my paint out. Now these are washes, meaning there is a lot of water in here, and you can use like a little water bottle to thin those out as you go. So first step is I'm gonna go in the direction of my wood grain. I don't wanna go all the way across. Because I'm doing wood grain, I kind of wanna start that grain effect even with this base coat. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a solid color because it's wood grain. So you can even kind of come in and do some light and dark in there. Okay. So that's kind of my first step there. Very, very loose. Now I'm going to use my hair dryer just for speed's sake. All right. So now I'm going to jump to my color number 3, which is my kind of mid-dark here. If you look at my tones, I started with 1. 2 is just going to be a second coat of 1. And then my brown 3, this is what I'm going to use to do the kind of the grain lines. So I'm going to use a really fine brush. And this is, now it's wood grain, so it's very loose. It's a natural look, so they don't have to be like super straight lines. That's the beauty of it. So I'm going to kind of give myself a couple of strong top to bottom ones here to start with, just to kind of establish my direction and give myself some lines to kind of work around as I do the rest of these. So now, if you want, you can even kind of do some that come together. You know how wood has almost those little kind of knots in it, so you can do things like that. So don't worry too much about this. It is background. It is going to disappear, but still kind of have that foundation look for you. But don't worry too much about, oh my gosh, my lines crossed, or this didn't look right. It's all going to become part of the bigger piece, and this will be kind of something that's there, but not as prominent as it seems to be right now. Okay. And then I'm going to go over some of these lines a second time once they dry, so that you have some that are lighter, some that are darker. Because again, it's wood, so it's not all the same. Wood has a lot of variety to it, even within a few inches of itself. Okay, so I think that's enough to start. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this real quick. Ooh, a little hot on the fingers there. You can always kind of wipe stuff off too. It's really wet. All right, so you can see I've got some spots here that are already a little bit darker. So what I want to do is I want to kind of get some other spots just by not redoing the whole line, just sort of stopping and starting and giving some of those lines little darker spots in places, just to give it a little bit more variety. And they'll show up a little bit better too. Once we get, because they're going to do a few different layers on top of this too, some washes and things, so this stuff can get a little bit lost. So you want it light, but you also want it to be seen for all your hard work to show through. Okay, so there I've kind of given myself some dark spots, and I'm going to go ahead and dry those. Move my hand out from under there. I see some old friends watching, Becky and Alex. Thank you guys. All right, so next I'm going to take my lightest color here. I'm going to use kind of an off-white. You can use white, but I'm going to use more of a cream color, just because this is wood and kind of in the brown tones. I'm going to use a cream color here. So I'm going to take my same brush and thin this down a little bit here, so that it's, when you have a little bit of water in it, it becomes a little more spreadable rather than the paint right out of the jar. So this is I'm basically going to kind of go in between the dark spaces that I did and kind of put white lines. Now you don't want to totally fill that space. You still want some of that brown base coat showing through. So don't look at it as like I have to cover every space that's showing through those darker lines with the light color. You're just kind of adding some white. And again, this is just going to give it a little bit more depth once we kind of put our final wood wash over the top. So I'm just going to kind of fill in, again, not everything. Some can go all the way top to bottom. Some can just kind of stop and start. Little pieces of white or light color here. One of the things with when you paint, you realize white and black, once you get to white, you cannot go anywhere else brighter. And once you get to black, You can't go anywhere else darker. So you kind of want to reserve your whitest whites and your blackest blacks until the end and just put them on as, you know, kind of a final highlight or a final low light. So this is an off-white, so it's never going to be white, but it's also kind of watered down, so it's not going to be at full strength anyway. Okay, so there is kind of my little white highlights there in the wood. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to dry this again real quick. And I'm going to come back a little bit, kind of like I did with the brown, and I'm going to hit some of these a second time, just little pieces of it, because that's really going to, once you get that second coat on there, even though it's watered down, it's going to be a little more opaque and not so transparent, and so it will show up a little bit more under the brown wash that I'm going to add. So not a whole lot, you don't want to overdo it, but just a few kind of hot spots there. All right. So now we're going to dry this guy again. All right, I'm looking at names here real quick. I see Christina from Orlando, Christopher, good to see you. Joanna from my high school days again, Tim and Linda. Thank you guys for tuning in. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the wash I started with my bigger brush, and I'm going to put another coat of this on here. And this is going to kind of stain down these and knock them back a little bit. So again, it's still kind of a light color or a light wash. It's not a thick paint, it's a transparent wash. And what that does is it kind of knocks those down, but you can still see them. It does make the dark lines a little bit darker, but the light ones you still kind of see through. Okay, so now this is going to be my lightest color on here. So if you look at in my brown location sample, where you see that lightest color, those are going to remain what is on here now. The next color down, which would be what I'm going to call brown 2, is basically still that same color I used on the wash. I'm just going to take a slightly bigger brush, and I'm going to fill in, I'm going to basically put that same kind of wash just over the sections that would be the next darkest color. So it's taking what's there and kind of shading it down another layer without really changing the color. Just a darker version of what's already there. So now I look at my own picture here and make sure I fill in the right spots. And what's nice about a wash, the reason I use washes, and even when I've done scenic painting on full-size sets, I tend to use a lot of kind of a water wash because it lets me sort of build it up rather than just going in and painting something where you're like, oh, that's too dark, I got to repaint it. The wash kind of lets you, basically it's acting like a stain, like a wood stain. And you can come back in later and add more wood stain if you feel like it needs it. And it lets you sort of build that up. It's a little more forgiving in that sense. It's not like a one-time thing and you're like, oh, that didn't go well, I got to start over. Now, I will say it's easier to add more. It is very hard to take it off. Now, if you ever do something and you're like really unhappy with it and you can catch it fast enough, you can kind of throw some water on it with a squirt bottle and a paper towel and kind of salvage it a bit. But for the most part, once it's on there pretty good. So that is my second layer, so it's a second darkest color. So it's basically just a slightly darker version of the number 1. Now, once we get to number 3, that is back to the color that we had when we did our dark lines. And so that color is going to drop into, where do I have that? It's going to be the teeth, and it's going to be sort of this upper eyebrow here and this side of the nose. So as we're going to start to kind of give him a little dimension, So we got that. We got the underside of this guy. And he's gonna have some dark teeth. His teeth are not the best. But again, what that does compared to the lips is it kind of pushes them backwards to the eye. Because they're darker, they're going to recede. So it's going to make those teeth look like they are inside and back from the lips. Okay, so there's that color. Now I'm going to jump to my number 4. And number 4 is going to be a little bit darker. So that's going to be the inside of his eyes, this triangle here, the upper eyebrow, and then this little, this little notch there. I'm looking at the bottom. I'm trying to remember what I did on the very bottom, but we'll figure that out. Okay, so my number 4 is a darker brown, which is pretty much, brown mixed with some black. And again, it's very watered down because even with the darkest color, I'd rather build that color up than just put it on in one shot and try and hope that that's going to be right. Okay, so we got 1 eyebrow, 2 eyebrows. So why this eyebrow looks like it's receding is because if it was a 3D piece, it would kind of be angled downward. It would start here and it would kind of angle down into the eyelid there. So then we're going to do the bottom of his nose because that is the most in shadow. And then we're going to do this little circle design down here. Now this is a color I may come back and say, you know what, I want that to be, it's not enough contrast. I might give that a second coat to make it a little bit darker and push it back, recede it a little bit more. So let's dry that. Let's see what that's like. All right, now when I look at that color, I think it needs to be a little darker. I don't feel like there's enough contrast there. So I'm going to come back in with my same thing, and I'm going to put a little bit more. Thank you all for the love. I see the little hearts there. Okay, now this one, if you want, you can kind of actually do this one where it's a little bit darker at the bottom, kind of fan it out or thin it out as you go up, and that will actually make it look a little bit like it's angled. So definitely under the nose here, that should be very dark because it is away from the light. And then we're going to give this guy, because there's not enough contrast between the teeth and this thing, so we're going to do that. I think I'm going to leave this bar at the bottom kind of the light color, even though it's a little different than what I had on my original. And I forgot to do this. So this is this little, it's going to look like a little inset cut into the wood. All right, let's try that. And let's come in here and give that a little bit more dark, kind of from the bottom up. It can get a little bit lighter as it gets to the top. All right. Okay, so that's kind of our 4 basic tones there. So he's looking okay. So the next step, we're going to start doing some, let's go ahead and do the outlining. So that's where I'm going to take my darkest color, which is my number 5, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to outline everything on here. And these don't have to be perfect. They can be kind of thick and thin. They don't have to be like these precise, perfect lines, because this is kind of a rough, it's a carved piece of wood. You can even kind of wiggle your brush and, kind of give your line even a little bit of texture. And I am going to go ahead and do my outside edges too, kind of just outline the whole thing. And then what we'll do is we'll paint that outside paper edge too, so it matches the front. Okay. So if you have questions, please post them. I probably won't get to them here, but I will definitely look over everything when I'm done and come back and answer everybody's questions. So, and I was talking about last week, there are things are skills. There's talents and there's skills. Painting, a thin line like this is not a talent, it is a skill. And it's just one of those things you kind of learn from doing. So the more you do it, the better you get at it, the faster you get, because I admit I'm going pretty fast here. But that is only because I have done this for a lot of years. So I'm pretty fast with the brush. And I also know, I also know it's not that important, if I mess it up. And you can see we got a little bit of a blob here. So rather than fix that, I'm going to actually repeat it on the other side. And then it will look like it was intentional. That was, I posted a quote by John Cleese yesterday that was talking about, the thing that keeps us from being creative a lot of times is the fear of making a mistake. And one of the things I commented on somebody's response to that was I said, one of the things I remember them telling me in art school was, if you make a mistake, repeat it. And then it becomes kind of a pattern, or it looks intentional. It looks like it was meant to be part of the art. And that has served me well over the years. Because sometimes you can fix things and sometimes you can't. And the reality is nobody knows it's a mistake unless you point it out. Okay, so I almost got all these lines on. And we're going to go ahead and outline the teeth as well. So we're going to get, and then we're going to create some highlight and shadow on these teeth too to make them look a little more dimensional. Okay, there's that. Okay, we just got this little line here. I'm going to do one across this base here. And up the sides. Now it gets a little tough. I'm running out of place to hold this. Let's see if I can turn them sideways. That's the other thing too is, don't try and force your hand to the direction. Sorry, I realize I'm bumping the camera there. Don't always try and turn your hand to get the thing, to get, the angle you want. Something like, especially this small, it's much easier just to turn the art to a place that it's comfortable for you to paint. So don't feel like you have to just contort your body. All right, so there is all my lines. So we're going to dry this guy real quick. And so there is a bit of a paint buildup there. So we're going to thin that out a little bit with a brush. All right, so yes, I do definitely have a big blob here, which, oops, I just did another big blob. So see, I caught that one in time. But, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come on the other side and I'm going to kind of just mimic that a little bit. And it kind of, again, it becomes a very dark spot, which that would be a dark spot because of where it's located. So, see, that's what we call a happy accident. All right, so now on these teeth, we had shaded those with the number 3. So I'm going to come back to my number 3. Now, everything is highlight and shadow. So if I've got a piece of wood, which would be like this tooth here, and my light source is coming this way, it's going to hit these edges here with a highlight, and then this edge, as it wraps around, would be the darkest. So you always have to kind of pick a light source. So I'm going to assume my light source is coming that way because actually it is. So on each side of the teeth here, I'm going to just do a little line of that same number 3 that I base coated the teeth with. And then there also would be one on the underside of the top row of teeth because they would be in shadow compared to the opposite end. All right, so we're going to... Okay, and there's some that show up better than others, so for some reason this one didn't show up. And then I'm going to do this edge too. All right. All right, now for the highlight, we're gonna go, oh gosh, I'm totally sorry. That was not good. There we go. So we're gonna go back to the off-white here and put a little water in that. And now we're gonna hit those highlighted edges, remembering again that the light's coming this way, so it's gonna be this edge and the top. So we'll start with the tops here. So we're just gonna do a little line. Now there would not be one along that top edge because it is in shadow under the lip, but there will be, this is the edge that the light is hitting also. So on this top row, you would have you would just have this one side. That's the only one getting light from your light source. So that's the highlights and the shadows on the teeth. And so since we got the highlight, I'm going to come in and I'm going to start doing some of the other highlighting. Now, this can be built up too. So my first layer of this, I kind of want a little bit thin, just because it gives me the ability then to come back and really do some highlights. So I'm going to do one under his eyelid here, because that is the highest part of that section. And I'm also going to do a if you water it down a little bit more, I'm actually going to do one on this lid too. But this would be less bright than this one. But we're going to come back and hit this one a little bit sooner, or a little bit brighter. Now on this upper thing here, because the light's coming this way, this is recessed, this edge would be getting the light. And this edge a little bit too, so we're going to do a thinner one there. So that kind of highlights that edge and pushes that black part down even further. Now on the nose, on this side of the nose, the lighter side, I'm going to do a highlight going up there just to the side of the black line, and I might actually kind of fan that down a little bit so it kind of brings that point up a little bit again. Another highlight, we're going to highlight the lips here, so it's sort of like this top edge a little bit on the side here too. So it could be because we've done the side of the teeth. We're going to come and do a highlight on this top part of the lip. And then we're going to come down here and do one on the top part of the bottom lip. And underneath this little circle here, because again it's recessed, this is going to be the highlight edge where the light would hit. And then on the bottom little rim of the mug, we're going to do a little highlight across that too. Now, once those colors have dried, I'm going to come back in with a little bit thicker version of that same off-white, and I'm going to make I'm not going to go the whole line. I'm going to kind of go a little bit in the middle of that line. And then on this one, I might just hit this side because that's going to get a little bit bigger hit of light than the other side. Same thing on the nose, like the highest part is the bottom, so I'm going to hit it a little bit harder there. On the lip, I'm just going to do that little corner there. Come down, do a little bit there. And then again, once it comes back up to that corner, I'm going to hit a little bit there. And then same thing on the bottom. The highest part here is this middle, so that's going to get the biggest hit of light. And then the same thing on this little thing here. It'd kind of be that little bottom edge is going to be a little bit brighter than the sides. And then on this center of the cup, that middle line is, or the middle of it's going to be a little bit brighter than the other ones. So that is pretty much all the highlights and shadows. Now, if you want to get crazy, you can come back in with some of your other colors and do some, like, just for example, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but like, say you wanted to add a little bit of shading, like you can do things like this where you kind of start somewhere and sort of phase that out, and then it kind of makes it a little bit darker there. Or on the bottom, if you want to make it look a little bit rounder, you can kind of shade the outside edges of this rim as it gets lighter as it comes forward. That will help round it a little bit. So, but for now, oh, and then I'm going to do a couple of dark shadows. So if you come back in with your darkest color, like on your eye, and you kind of put sort of a really dark, thicker line there, that kind of gives a little bit of a shadow under that. And you can even do maybe with like a number 3 or a number 4, you could do a shadow over the teeth by kind of coming in with kind of a wash over the teeth, and that'll kind of pop that lip out a little bit more. So let me dry this guy. So I think for sake of time, we're gonna leave this guy where he's at. Oh, the one other thing I always do is, because I don't like to see this white edge of the paper there compared to all this lovely painting you've done on the front. Since we outlined it with the number 5, I'm gonna take that 5 and I'm gonna go all the way around, and I'm gonna get rid of that white edge. Now, and one thing I've learned over the years is I paint from the back. If I was to paint this from the front and slip, I would get that paint across the artwork and ruin it, which I have done. So I'm going to paint from the back, because if I slip and ruin it, it's just on the back. So I'm going to get rid of this annoying white edge with the same color that is on the front right next to it. And that's something I do with pretty much all of my artwork, and there's times I will paint. Welcome back. I don't know what happened. I've never had that happen where Facebook the entire program just quit on me. So that's not good. So I hope everybody finds their way back. I'm just finishing up painting the edge of this little guy here. And then he's gonna be pretty much done for all intents and purposes. So we're gonna move on to the leaves. So I'm going to set this guy, hey Keith Politic, we're going to set that guy aside for now. And I'm going to dump out all of my leaves here that I pre-cut out of paper. And I'm going to take some green that is a darker green than these leaves, because I'm going to basically cut all these leaves in half with the green, just to kind of give them, if you can see on here, just to kind of give them a little more interest. So again, it's still kind of a wash, because it looks more interesting than just a solid color, and it gives you some flexibility if you want to add more or less. So I'm going to basically you can draw the line first, or you can just freehand it. Whatever you think will work. So I'm just going to take every leaf. I'm not really paying attention to which side of the leaf I'm doing. I figure they're just all going to be different, and it just adds a little bit of interest to them. So, and then while those dry, we can assemble the flowers, and then everything should be ready to glue together. So I apologize again. I'm not sure what happened with Facebook Live there. It just went out, like it quit on me. I don't know if I hit some kind of time limit, but that is a possibility. So I will have to look into that. But I've moved on, and I am taking each leaf and painting half of it with a darker green than the paper that it's cut from. Now, if you wanted to cut these out of white paper, that's all you had, you can always paint them green too. I would paint them all a base coat of the light green, and then come back in and paint them with the dark green, because the dark green will go over the light green a lot better than the light green would go over the dark green. So that is a possibility too. What I did is I just took a piece of green paper that I had and cut them out, because that saves me the step of base coating them. All right, so I got a few more here. Okay, so welcome back. If you're finding us again, I apologize for the abrupt departure thanks to Facebook. I'm not sure why, but we are back, and I'll post these, and I'll have both videos up, number 1 and number 2, so people, and I'll link them both together. I think I can link them both together, maybe on YouTube, so it'll be one video. All right, so all my leaves are done or painted and drying. While those dry, I'm gonna move that out of the way, And I'm going to take my little flower template. Sorry, pardon the reach. Oh, where did that go? Oh, no. Oh, it's on the floor. Okay, so I have my flower template. And there's 3 different sizes, one for each size leaf. So I am going to put a little glue down. It's just a white glue. And I'm actually going to use a paintbrush for this. If you use I try to, in an ideal world, I don't mix my paintbrushes for glue and paint, but sometimes I'm lazy and I do. But if you do use it for glue, make sure you clean it really well. So this is just a really simple, you're just going to put a little bit of glue in the middle and kind of work your way around. And the template's there just to help you line them up. I know first version of this I made, I eyeballed them and thought, oh, this will be easy. And I found it was not. So I figured I would give you an easy template to make sure all the petals are evenly spaced. All right, okay, so there's one more there. And then we're gonna add a little, oops, I probably should get this a little bit more on screen. And then we're gonna add a little bit of color to these before we put the yellow dot on. And the yellow dot, I know I said you can punch it with a hole punch. You could cut that by hand. You could do anything. I just happen to have a big bunch of hole punches, and they work great for stuff like that. So I use the hole punch. These leaves I cut out by hand. I mean the white petals, sorry. I did cut these out by hand. I used an X-Acto knife, but you are welcome to use scissors or any way you like to cut. Now what I did is I just printed them onto the white paper that I was going to cut them on, and then cut them out, and basically the lines were on the back. So by the time I turn it over, you don't see whatever's left of the little black line that maybe I missed in cutting it out. So it's easier than trying to draw them or transfer them somehow. If you can just print the line out and cut it from the back, that makes it a lot easier. Okay, couple more petals here. Oops. Come on, oops, maybe I'm moving too fast. It's like memories of childhood when I would build plastic models with the model glue, and I was impatient, never wanted to wait for it to dry. So I kept moving on, and then eventually the whole thing would just collapse into a plastic gluey heap, and me collapse into tears. But I am admittedly moving a little fast, just for sake of time. Okay, so I've got my 3 leaves. Now I'm gonna put a little pink on my plate there, if we can see. And again, I'm gonna take my fine brush and water. I want to thin this down again. Just it gives it a nicer look too. It's a little more watercolory look and not just so much like, paint. So what I'm gonna do for each flower is kind of starting in the middle is just give it a few lines of pink, kind of like it's coming out from the center of the flower. Now remember, there will be a yellow dot over this, so it doesn't really matter how, what the actual middle of the flower looks like. So don't worry too much about that. So this is just giving these flowers a little bit of character, a little bit of color, so it's not just plain white paper. And you could use any color for this. I'm kind of thinking these are, I'm blanking on the name of the flower. I'm blanking on the name of the flower. Help me. It's that tropical flower. My neighbors have them. What is the name of that? Peter Fippinger. Hey, friend. Long time no see. All right. So now we've got those guys. And so now I'm going to go back to I'm going to move forward a little bit faster than I probably would. Hibiscus, thank you. It is a hibiscus flower. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot that. No, it's not a hibiscus. It's not a hibiscus. It's those ones people always sell cuttings from. I'm looking. Oh, I can't remember the name. All right, so we're gonna get those Little flowers glued. Okay, so now we have all our pieces. Though I did ruin one of my leaves, but that's okay. So I have a little template that, again, don't have to follow this at all, but I find it kind of helpful. So I am going to start with, you can do one of two things. You can start gluing the leaves on first, or you can kind of glue the flowers on. What I find helpful is, I'm going to use my hot glue for this. I'm just going to glue the center of the flower on, and then that lets me sort of slide the leaves underneath it. Like I don't have to, I don't have to decide where the leaves go and then hope the flowers look okay. I'm going to put the flowers on, but just by gluing that center, I can, it leaves me room to kind of slide the leaves underneath them. And this one I'm just using hot glue because it will dry super fast. So now I can take my leaves and put some glue on and kind of slide them under there. So I'm not even going to look at my template. I am just going to cram leaves under here visually. So I got a big one there. I do kind of remember I had kind of these two smaller ones poking up here. So this can be anything. You can use all the leaves, you can use half the leaves, you can use no leaves. You can do whatever you want. And if you really want to get at another step, you can kind of score your leaves along that line and fold them, and then even get a little bit of a crease in them, and that kind of adds a little more, just another level of dimension. I didn't do it on these ones, but that's okay. So now I got to try and lift that guy up and cram that leaf under there. Okay, so I got a few more. So he's coming together. And then there's going to be one more thing we're going to do to kind of make him look a little bit more like a mug. And he doesn't have to be a tiki mug. He could just be a tiki with flowers. So I decided to make him a tiki mug by adding a straw. Okay. So I think that's going to be it. Oops, I missed. We got that one there, and I do have one more leaf. I'm going to put that on the back there. Okay. So again, this is just kind of, you can follow my template, or you can just kind of see what you think looks good. All right, so the one more step we're going to do is, or a couple more steps, is I told you to get a piece of cardboard. Now this one, the only ones I had came from things I painted on multiple times, so it's got a little bit of gold paint. And you want to cut it, if you're going to use cardboard, cut it along, so it's vertical along the lines in the cardboard, the grain in the cardboard, because that'll make it easier to fold. And we're going to round this a bit by putting it on something round. I'm using a dowel. You can find anything really that's round, a broom handle, and you can kind of get that curve shape you wanted it. Now, I'm going to do the same thing to this guy, but gently. We're going to kind of give him a little bit of a curve, just so that it's easier once I go to glue it, rather than trying to curve it as I'm gluing it. So probably could have done this before I put the flowers on. That might have been the better way to go. But you can see he's got a little bit of a curve there. And I dropped my cardboard in the paint. Now this is one I'm going to use hot glue for. And you want to get it right to the edges, because that's what's going to help hold that shape. So I'm going to put a little bit there, a little bit there. Ooh, that is smoking. I've got it on the hot setting. Let's hope there's no ER visits today. All right, so now as that dries, I'm going to kind of use my fingers and sort of keep bending it, pushing it down along that shape as it dries. So what that cardboard does is it just helps hold that rounded shape more than just the paper by itself. Although the paper will kind of hold its shape. Paper has a memory, like, I know Olaf says water has a memory, but paper actually has a memory. If you bend it a certain way, it will typically stay that way. So the last step is I happen to have a bunch of straws that look like bamboo. I found these on Amazon. They're paper straws, but I use them a lot in art because they're cool looking straws and they look like bamboo. So all I'm going to do is put a little bit of hot glue on the back of that and, you know, kind of pick an appropriate angle and have that sort of poke out of the top. So, and there it is. Now, if you want, now when you lay that down, you know, the straw may get in the way. So if you look at my first sample, I kind of built up some spacers around it so that when it sat down, it was lifted off the page and the straw was actually up off the background. So you can add some additional spacers to the back of this if you want yours to kind of poke up. And then when you're all done, if you can find a cool background to put it on, I'm trying to get one here. Forgive my reach. This is a nice grass paper. This is actually a mat board, but they do sell a lot of grass papers or burlappy kind of papers and things you can get at Michael's or Hobby Lobby, different things like that. You can kind of pop that guy on that and throw him in a frame, and you have your own custom handmade tiki mug. So what I'm thinking of doing with this guy is possibly doing a couple similar ones and popping all three of them in a frame and offering it on my website. So stay tuned for that. And if you're interested, that information is daveavanzinodesigns.com is my website featuring different tiki art. And then also you can find me at Instagram at Dave Avanzino and on Facebook here at Dave Avanzino Designs. So I hope that was fun. I know it's kind of rushed. I feel compelled to kind of get through it so that it's not this super, super long thing, knowing you can all go back and kind of stop and start it as you do your own. But I hope this was fun. I would love to see some of your finished products, so please send them to me. And then also send me ideas. These are fun. They're fun to do. They're fun for me. I hope they're fun for you. I would love to do more. Maybe this Saturday thing becomes a regular. So if you have ideas or things you would like me to teach you how to do, please send me some ideas because it's hard to come up with this stuff. So I would welcome any help you have. So let me see if you have any quick questions. I have to change my vision now. So, oh, it's great. Thank you. Glad you guys liked it. That's nice to hear. So if you had any questions in the run of this thing, I will definitely go through that list after the fact, and I will get back to you and answer any of those questions I have. And if you ever have any questions, you can message me directly through my website or through Facebook or through Instagram. And I will be happy to answer those for you. And I also do custom work. So if you have a custom tiki piece you're interested in, you can always message me about that too. So would love a regular Saturday live video. Well, that may become a thing, so we will see. But I thank you all very, very much, and I wish you a great weekend, and I look forward to working with you again. So have a great day.